listening to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Oh, wow. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot that has happened since we last recorded a podcast.
Yeah. So I know that you heard us last week on Dear Rachel, but this is the first time we've recorded in a number of weeks. This is the first time in 2022 we've recorded. We got the dog barking, and I'm not going to edit out some of this because she keeps hearing snow fall from the branches outside and like hit the pavement and thinks someone's trying to like break in because the snow, we got like 7 inches of snow the other day, and now it's all melting and she's freaking out. I got stuff everywhere. I'm in the middle of moving.
You're moving this weekend.
Well, from my condo, RIP, to my parents' house, RIP me. I'm a vagabond. The Q1 of 2022 is Rachel living a vagabond life. Kristen had COVID and she can't stop coughing.
Yep. I'm going to do everything I can to hold it in, but we'll try to edit it out if it gets really bad. But I'm 95% of the way there, but the cough is just lingering. And the more I talk, which guess what you do on a podcast? You just talk for
it's a good thing I'm good at talking.
That is what aggravates it. So this should be really fun. We've got the dog yelling. We've got me coughing. We've got your house is half moved out. And
the next time we podcast, it'll be from my dad's man cave. So we can all look forward to that. I'll give you guys a description next time. Okay. Maybe not next time.
Something to look forward to.
But later this month, you'll get some sort of insight into where we're podcasting from next.
Welcome to 2022.
Everything's a mess. So this is a normal person interview, but try as you valiantly might, no one wanted to talk to you.
Not this early in the year.
Everyone was like, oh, I do want to do it, but I need a few more things to shake out before I talk to you. And she's like, cool. And she asked 3 different people and they all said the same thing. So clearly,
yes, just not now. And then as it turned out, the week that I was planning to record, or that I was hoping to record an interview, is the week I was most sick with a terrible sore throat and even worse cough than I have now. So it all worked out. It was not meant to be this month. So we're going to bring back an interview that I did way back in 2019, pre-COVID, which is wild.
Like the fall of 2019. So 2+ years ago now.
So I am trusting that most of you haven't heard this.
A lot of you haven't heard it. And if you did, you probably forgot half
You
of it.
probably don't remember. It's worth a re-listen. And it's a very valid conversation still. I actually like bringing it back at the start of a year because it's about how my client Francine took a year-long sabbatical from working.
Which couldn't be more relevant. It's more relevant now than it was when we recorded it. Because all these people have quit their jobs. I just saw a stat that said November of 2021, more people had quit their job than like any other month in, I think it was many years past. Wow. So like we're at like peak, like chosen unemployment, not getting laid off. Like I am choosing, maybe not unemployment. They might have been going to something else, right? But people choosing to leave their jobs in droves. And I couldn't be happier for all of that.
Yep. And so not only did she temporarily leave her job in the medical world as a physician. Wow. See, I can't even talk much. I can't say words.
It sounded like you were saying fish isn't, and it was almost like it was like a doctor for fish. That is not what she was.
Is that just called a veterinarian, or is there a special
aquatic vet? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. That's not what her job was.
No, that wasn't what it was.
No, it was just a normal physician. And it was a really specialized role. So she had all these beliefs.
Great timing for her to quit her job as a doctor right before COVID. What insight she had. And she took a break, right?
I know.
She was like, it was like prescient, right? She just kind of maybe felt it coming.
And nope, I'm not going to be part of that.
I'm going to take a sabbatical.
Mm-hmm. And during her sabbatical, she started a business. And she talks about how she figured out what kind of business she wanted to start. So I know some part of this is going to be relevant to just about everybody listening. Either you want a break from work, or you're currently on a break from work, or you're trying to figure out what you're passionate about, or you're trying to figure out what you want to do next. And all of that is in this conversation.
Cool. I'm going to read her bio. Okay. Francine doesn't have a passion, at least not in the traditional sense. She's curious, and embracing her passionless curiosity has made coping with life's uncertainties, like breaking her collarbone in Myanmar, tolerable and even fun. As a recovering perfectionist, a recovering physician, a writer, and a formerly shy person, Francine loves hearing people's stories and sharing lessons from her journey. Although she's currently nomadic, well, she was when she wrote this.
I'm not sure.
We don't know where she is now. We need to check in with Francine.
Yes.
She was living in Portugal at the time that she last lived in Portugal. Her heart is firmly planted in New York City. She relishes not having to wake up early, eating freshly made guacamole, as should we all, and listening to water sounds, included but not limited to waterfalls, fountains, and ocean waves. Francine is the founder of Evolving Conversations, a platform for anyone who loves deep thought and deep conversation and wishes it was easier to make better connections in their everyday lives. She firmly believes that you can talk deeply about anything, and she helps others do so on her site. Evolving Conversations, the URL is onevolving.com. She's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at onevolving. You can also find her on Medium, where she regularly writes guest posts that are the stimuli for the deep, provocative conversation she loves to have with people in her growing community.
You're definitely going to want to go check out Francine after this. So
I think
we will have all of that in the episode description.
And stick around till the end, because we are opening up coaching enrollment again next Friday. What? We usually give you more notice. Well, did you just hear everything that's going on? Sorry, we're giving you 1 week's worth of notice. We'll talk about it more at the end. But if you want to work with us, now is the time. And now is a very good time. We will tell you more later. Okay, bye.
Hi, Francine.
Hi, Kristen.
Hey, I'm excited to talk to you. You and I have emailed a bit, but this is the first time we've actually spoken on the phone since we coached together 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Can you believe it's been 4 years?
I can't believe it's been that long.
I know. It's wild. I mean, from what you've been telling me in email, I think it's safe to say that your life is pretty much unrecognizable from 4 years ago. Would you agree?
Yeah, which is why it's so nice to talk to you today and to your listeners, because it's made me look back at that time, and my life is totally different.
Yeah, it's true. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to look back. So this is kind of cool for you too, to look back and be like, wow, a lot's happened in those 4 years.
Yep.
Well, since I'm as eager to hear more of your story as I am for other people to hear it, I'm ready to just dive in.
Okay,
so,
let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so can you take me back? I mean, you're allowed to go further than this, but if you wanted to take me back at least to, let's say, early 2015 or so, when you reached out and when we started coaching together, and tell me a little bit about what life looked like then, how you were feeling then. Just paint me a picture of that.
Okay. So it was early 2015. No, so actually it was 2014 when I was practicing as a neuroradiologist, and I was just really unhappy with my job. I had some things going on at work that were really problematic. My boss was just really tyrannical, and there was a lot of unpredictability back then in that particular job, and I couldn't deal with it. So I started looking around for, I think I literally Googled how to switch jobs or how to change your career or something like that. And I found the passion profile quiz out there on the internet. And so I took that, and then it led me into the PPVE. And so then I did your program, and then we started coaching. But I really started the search for a coach just because I honestly couldn't get out of bed. Like, I was just so unhappy with the day-to-day. I was just feeling so depressed. I was like drinking a lot more on the weekends just to kind of get through things. Yeah. And I just really just didn't like my daily existence. I did like this specific activity of being a neuroradiologist. Like, I like looking at brain scans and stuff, but all of the bureaucracy around it, like the office life, it just made me so unhappy. Like the constraint on my time, just not having the freedom to really control like how like patients experienced, the doctor's office and all that stuff. It was just super frustrating because there were problems that I had to deal with that I couldn't fix. And so there were things that, people would complain about that I couldn't do anything about. And it's just a really paralyzing feeling. I was just stuck.
Yeah.
So that was my life.
Yeah. And I remember you feeling very burnt out and craving some more creativity, but also when we would talk about possibilities that weren't in the world of medicine, that would be really scary.
Yeah. Because I think one of the things that's kind of necessary to become a physician is like you really do have to get indoctrinated with being a doctor as being part of your identity, because you go through so much. Like, if you can't see the distinction between you and the job, you'll just stop. And we need doctors because people are going to keep getting sick. So, it's just kind of like, it makes sense to have that. And like, I couldn't really see, anything else besides being a physician. Like, I had a really specific skill set. I thought my options were private practice or, salaried employee in a hospital, or that was it, as a radiologist. So yeah, it was just, I remember when we started coaching, you asked me that, and I just had a blank. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, it was a very stuck place that I was in.
And I feel like a lot of people have that identity with their job. Like, I am a marketing person, or I am a lawyer, or whatever. But I totally see how, especially in the medical world, like you said, you go through so much and you put so much time and blood and sweat and tears into becoming a doctor in the first place that it's amped up so much more. So yeah, I'm sure it felt very limited when you looked at your options. So how did you start to break free of some of those self-imposed limitations? Like, I have to stay in medicine. I can do in private practice or a hospital or whatever, but that's about it.
Well, I think it was, when we were coaching, I was looking at what my core personal values were. And, I realized my principal one is freedom. And I also value connection. And I just saw that everything I was doing was antithetical to my core personal values. So it made a lot of sense as to why I was unhappy. And especially the freedom one, because, I feel like, although I had some good moments in my 20s, I feel like I really missed out a lot, just working so hard in my school and in training. So once I got kind of clear about, really needing to experience freedom, in my career and in my life, then I realized I needed to just look outside of medicine. Cause I thought about, I have a lot of friends and colleagues, still in medicine. And I looked at all of them and all the people I'd ever worked with, and nobody had a life that really matched up with my core personal values. So at that point, it became pretty clear that I was going to have to look at something outside of it. And so then I started looking, like when we ended our coaching, your homework for me was to do informational interviews. And so I started talking to people who were physicians or in the science field that had left the traditional clinical practice track. And so I started just basically doing informational interviews with them. And then once I started to really like look for those people, I found out that there's a lot of people who are also burnt out and just really tired of medicine, or, I mean, really like we're talking about medicine, but I think this is any sort of corporate job, like lawyers and all this stuff. So there's just like a whole slew of people who are, unhappy. And so once I started to seek them out, then, we talked, and it was like really great because I didn't feel alone. And then they told me to talk to other people and, all this stuff. So,
and you start getting proof that you can leave and other things exist and the world's not going to crumble around you if you make a big change, because look at all these people who've done it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was just really nice to know that I wasn't the only person who was feeling so burnt out and so tired and so fed up. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in this process of exploring, considering new possibilities, probably feeling like you're starting to put together a little bit of a plan. And then I didn't know this till much later, but the end of 2015 was just really hard, just unexpectedly hard. I think you called it in one of your emails. You used Liz Gilbert's phrase, the dark night of the soul. So tell me as much as you want to share about that. And even more specifically, how did you cope with life throwing you such challenging curveballs like that?
Yeah. So, I was in the midst of these informational interviews and then and feeling pretty good about everything. And all of a sudden, my dad got sick, and we expected him to recover, and he didn't. So he died somewhat unexpectedly. So this is like the first person who'd really passed away that was close to me. And it really just shifted my view on reality. Grief is like, it's really crazy. I mean, you expect it to be sad, but all of these other feelings come up. Like I just, besides being devastated, I was just feeling like abandoned, guilty, concerned about my own mortality, like frustrated that I couldn't do anything to save him, especially because I'm a doctor, and just really wasn't sure where to turn. But I think just because of the nature of who I am, and basically because my practice at the time left no choice, I had to just keep working. And I think in that time span, it also became apparent to me that, I was kind of just a workhorse at the job I had, and they really didn't care about me. So that was an important realization.
Yeah, there's something about losing someone so close to you that can't help but put everything in perspective. Just things that mattered so much just don't matter in the same way anymore. Yeah, and you question a lot more things like, what am I doing here? So it's such a complicated experience to experience grief, because you're missing the person, but you're feeling, like you said, so many other emotions. You're questioning so many things in your own life that had felt solid or clear before. So I can only imagine just in trying to go to work and pretend like everything's fine and do just as good of a job. Yeah. I mean, that is so hard.
Yeah. And, all of that, as I've found out later, is perfectly normal to experience. But at the time, I was also in a serious relationship, and that was doing okay beforehand, and then kind of started to go south after my father passed away. And I just felt like I wasn't really getting the support or understanding from that person. And so basically 2 months after my father died, that relationship ended. And that also just really triggered my fear of abandonment. And so, I just didn't even have the clarity to see that it was time for this relationship to end, because I just didn't want to be alone. So once that happened, and, it was like around the holidays, and I was still, very much in the throes of grief, I was just like, well, you know what, the only thing that I can actually take charge of is my career. So why don't I just get into therapy, make sure that I process this grief experience and also this breakup in a way that doesn't derail my entire life. And so that's what I did. So the beginning
that is
of the
so much all at once for one person to try to handle. Just so many emotions to try to process. So I'm so glad that you said, I think I maybe need to work some of this stuff out. I'm gonna do some therapy and process, because nobody should be expected to process the death of a parent and the end of a long-term relationship in the span of 2 months, all on their own.
Right.
That is just too much.
Yeah. And I've always been a strong person, and that's, been great for my career, because you deal with a lot of terrible stuff. And so I was like, I can probably work through this stuff on my own, but it would be so much better if I had some support. And it was just the best decision I ever made. So I got into cognitive behavioral therapy after interviewing a bunch of different types of therapists. And through that, I, worked through my grief and the breakup, which took the better part of the next year. And then also I just sorted out what I was going to do with my career. It was basically pushing the fast forward button on my healing. I think that's the best way to think about it.
Right. You can't just snap your fingers and heal, but you can get some support to make the process speed up, so you don't feel like you get stuck in it for nearly as long. Yeah. Because I think that, grief is very difficult, and some people, I don't think ever fully get over it. No one ever fully gets over it, but I think it can handicap a person if they don't take the time to process and allow those feelings to exist. So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm really glad you did it.
Okay, so was it in therapy then that you decided to quit your job as a neuroradiologist? Or was that separate?
No, it was in therapy, because once we got through the kind of acute phases with everything else that was going on, it basically turned into a career coaching sessions. But it was also kind of coping with, how to deal with the day-to-day of being in this job that, wasn't satisfying me. So basically I had some informational interviews. I started doing them again, but I just really felt like the idea of turning towards anything or trying anything else new, I just didn't have the bandwidth at the time. I was just too burnt out. I just really didn't want to work. And so I said that, and then, my therapist was like, well, is there a way that you can not work? And I was like, oh, I don't know.
That's not a question anyone ever asks most people, right? You're like, of course you're going to work. That's what people do. She's like, do you have to?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it just, and that's what's so great about having a therapist or a coach, because it's just, you guys just reflect these questions that sometimes we're just so blocked and you can't sort of examine the issue from all angles. So she asked me that. And so then I was like, yeah, I actually just don't want to work for a while. I've been working so hard for so long. I don't want to do it. So basically with her and then with my CPA, I made this financial and emotional plan to get through the next 10 or 11 months and save a bunch of money so I didn't have to work for a year. And so that's what I did. So basically for 11 months, I kind of still did my job and tried to focus on the parts of it that I enjoyed, and tune everything else out. And then I just saved money. And I, had it all worked out mathematically, and like met with my CPA a couple of times to just review everything. And and then I had a date marked on the calendar, and I put in my notice, and then I left. So
that felt like so much freedom to walk out of there for the last time. And I love that you made a financial and an emotional plan for the next year. Yes, that it's like you got to have the logistical stuff. I get that, but you also got to take care of your emotional state. I love that. A lot of people, a lot of my clients would tell me this. A lot of people fantasize about this idea of being able to take a year off work to travel or write or, just kind of get straight with themselves. So you actually got to do that. And at a really critical time when you needed it the most. So I'm curious, what was that experience like, giving yourself that space for the first time, maybe ever? And what were some of the things that you learned about yourself in that year?
So I have to say, just before we get into that like, the emotional plan I made in therapy, it was very much necessary because I had a lot of fear around leaving my job. As much as I wasn't happy, it was the only thing I knew. Working hard was the only thing I knew. So there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of anxiety. But because I had this goal and this experience I wanted to have, I just didn't let the fear stop me. So it wasn't one of those things where it's like, take the leap and just quit your job. And it was not that at all. I was very scared to do it, but, I got through it so I walked out, and honestly, it was a little anticlimactic. My colleagues were really wonderful. They got me like a really nice going away gift, and they were like, if you change your mind after your trip, you should come back. And I was like, aw. So it kind of like, it really messed up the fantasy I had of just like, flipping over the table and like giving everyone the finger. It was not like that.
Everyone was so nice they even invited you back. You're like, oh, I wanted this to be like really final and dramatic.
Yeah. But I had basically booked my flight to Thailand for a couple of weeks after I left, so there was no going back on anything. And that was my first solo trip. I went to Thailand for 9 weeks by myself, and it was amazing. It was really awesome. I was super nervous leading up to it. I did all the research about all of the things, all of the luggage, and all the thing, and what you should do. And I had all these lists of like solo travel and all this stuff. And then I got to Bangkok, and it was just like, wow, this place is amazing. And it was just one of the most transformative experiences I've ever had. I learned so much about how independent I could be, how resourceful I could be, how I actually really enjoy talking to people and hearing their stories, how like a lot of unexpected things happened on that trip. Just like I would arrive on a dock and I was supposed to go into an island, and there's supposed to be a ferry, but the ferry wasn't there. So like I had to figure out something else to do. And then like getting from the one place to the dock, I had to take a motorbike, and I didn't want to ride on the back of a motorbike because that seemed really dangerous, but there was no other way to get there. So I had to do, so it was just like,
wow.
All of these things kind of pushing me and challenging me.
You had to tap into reserves of courage and resourcefulness that you probably had never really had to do when you were in your own familiar surroundings.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it had been ages since I'd had to do like really, really challenging things like that on the job because, as a radiologist, I was just interfacing with people's scans. Like I wasn't the one giving the bad news, which also takes a lot of courage and resourcefulness. Yeah. So it was just kind of really interesting to just have, these different challenges, but it's just like, it makes you grow and it really pushes your boundaries and your limits. It was an amazing experience.
Well, I think everyone should be allowed a year to travel and just get to know themselves without the pressures of work and all of that. I just wish that were a federally funded initiative.
Yeah, I agree. I really think it should be. When people ask me if I have any regrets about like anything, I really don't, because I think everything happens, for a reason. But I honestly do wish I'd taken a year either after high school or probably for me after college. I think it would have really given me a better perspective on my career and just how I see the world and on myself.
I know. Well, although I feel like you had that experience right at the right time for when you needed it the most. Yeah. So it worked out. Okay. So you went to Thailand for 9 weeks, you said?
Yeah.
And then you still had the whole rest of the year, and you traveled some more, right? You traveled a few times in that year?
Yes, I did. So one thing that happened right when I got back from Thailand is I was descending into the airport and I was looking at the Manhattan skyline because I'm from New York. And I was just like, wow, I really did not miss New York at all. And I'd never had that feeling any other time in my life. So that just like plays into what happened later. So a couple of months after I got back from Thailand, I decided to go to the Pacific Northwest. So I went to Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco. And I'd never been to Seattle and Portland before. So I ended up being out there for like a total of a month. Just like I stayed in the mountains outside of Seattle. And then I just like bounced around Portland for a few days. And then I went to see some friends in San Francisco. And then in August, I spent, I think it was like 22 days in Cuba. So, so that was pretty wild. Cuba's great. Everyone should go. Forget about, travel bans and all that stuff. Everyone should go. It's a really amazing place. The people are so warm and wonderful. And, it's a really amazing. The food is like not so great, but the beaches are really nice. It's really awesome. And the people are super warm. So it was just a challenging experience because if you do the 5 days in Havana, it's great. But if you do any longer than that, you go deeper into the country. The lack of internet is something that it's quite challenging, especially if you're playing like, just flying by the seat of your pants with accommodation. So it was a very interesting and challenging experience.
Yeah, talk about resourcefulness.
Yeah, it just really tries your patience and your resourcefulness. Yeah, for sure. And then actually after I got back from that trip, I was like, okay, it's now. I'd moved to a different apartment in New York, and I was like, okay, well, I should probably start looking at jobs because it's now fall and I want to have something by the end of the year. But I just couldn't, when I listened to my inner voice, I couldn't step foot back in a hospital.
You'd come too far in the past year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the original plan had been to come back and do locum tenens work, which is basically like freelancing, but for physicians. It's short-term contracts at different hospitals, could be around the country even. But I really couldn't go back to a hospital. I just had tasted freedom and I just wanted to keep doing it. So I started, so I thought back about the informational interviews that you had me do, and I realized that the only thing that really interested me was this radiologist I talked to who was working for a tech startup in Boston that was focusing on radiology. And so I was like, oh, that seems really cool. So I started looking around online, and I found a company that was doing something in radiology. And so like over several months, I basically like networked and figured out how to become an advisor for this company. And so I started consulting with them, and it was great because I could do it remotely and still travel and all that stuff. So I started working with them at the end of that year. And then after about a month and a half, I went to Colombia. And that was my first time as a digital nomad because I was working and traveling. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to figure out how do you work and travel, because it's very different from just taking a trip, because you have all day, every day to explore. And this was like, okay, I got to find like faster internet and I have to do my work. And then, so it was just like time management, and it was a bit challenging, honestly, because I just got really into like the freedom of like time freedom,
Yeah.
So, but once I figured it out, I decided that I was going to go later that year. So now we're talking last year, 2018. So I decided I was going to go to Portugal for a month. And really like do the digital nomad thing. They have a really strong community there. They have weekly meetups. They have all these different events. And yeah, so then I worked in Portugal for a month, and it was really great. So at the end of that, I decided that it was time to leave New York City, because I had just been feeling ever since that Thailand trip, that it was time to move out of my favorite city in the world. So I decided to do that. And so September of last year, I moved to Portugal, and I was there up until April of this year.
Wow. I really love how what ended up happening, which you wouldn't have even known was a possibility 4 years ago, was you still used your specialty in your experience in radiology, but in a totally different capacity that allowed you so much more freedom and to live in any country really that you wanted to. You were able to move to a different country while working, which I don't even know if you would have considered before.
Yeah. I mean, you're completely right. I mean, this was a position that I couldn't have even imagined a few years ago. And so, just for anybody who's listening, like if there's something like this out there for a neuroradiologist, there's something like this out there for anything else, because there's just so many other skills that are more translatable to remote work. So you just have to like really spend a lot of time researching and like really just be open, just like believe that it can actually exist.
Yeah, and having those conversations with people who have done some version of it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I definitely got really lucky, but honestly, like I put myself out there. I talked to people, and then I asked them to recommend who else I should talk to, and just so on and so forth. And so, that networking element is really important too.
Yeah, I love that. You're like, if my very specialized skill of neuroradiology can be translated to some out of the box type careers, then probably whatever most people are doing who are listening to this is also transferable. That's really helpful. It's like, you might think it's too specialized, but if yours wasn't, then most people's probably aren't.
Yeah.
So it sounds like around this point, while you're working for this startup company remotely, that you, or maybe it was before then, you can correct me if the timeline's wrong, but you were recognizing that your love of freedom, maybe even your need for a lot of freedom and independence, was drawing you toward entrepreneurship as well. So when did that realization come up?
That's really interesting. I think when I got back from Thailand in March 2017 that's when I really started to think about entrepreneurship, because it was before I had secured the consulting job, but it really became more of a real desire once I started working for the consulting job, because it was great. It really checked a lot of boxes. I was using my existing skills. I had time freedom. I was being compensated decently. But it just didn't, there wasn't complete freedom there. I was still really dependent on this startup. And I was like, startups are kind of shaky. Like, if I had my own business, like, I would have to do all the work, but, I would be able to be in charge of how much money I'm making, what skills I'm using, and also my time. So that's when I really started to think about entrepreneurship. That continues to be a tricky journey for me. When I first took the passion profile quiz, I think I got a Thriver, and then I took it like sometime later, maybe sometime when we were coaching, and then I got Side Hustler, and now I take it and I get Firestarter. So I think it just like changed as my burnout sort of decreased.
Yeah, I feel like your Thriver was a false positive where you were just burned out and tired of working.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then once you were a little bit more recovered, you're like, okay, I can take this for real now and see what I really relate to.
Exactly. So that's kind of when the idea of having my own business got started. But honestly, I still feel a bit burnt out. Like I knew I wanted to provide value for people. I knew I wanted to use my creative skills to help people, but I still didn't really know what it looked like. So basically, I tried just a couple of different things. I tried writing ebooks, and I was either told that they wouldn't sell or told that like it wasn't like valuable enough. And so it was just kind of defeating because it also, like, despite that external criticism, like something really wasn't resonating about any of those ideas. And so at the beginning of this year, I reached out to you for business coaches because I was full steam ahead with the, writing ebooks. And then I ended up just crossing paths with somebody who was like a mindset coach and a spiritual coach in a secular fashion. And so that person really just, we really connected. And so I started working with him, and it turned out I still had some issues. I have to say, like, one of the things I've learned on this journey the last few years is just like, this really is a journey. It's not like I arrived and everything's fantastic. Like, there's still, things to unpack. There's still things to work through. And I still had some residual issues from, being a physician, from spending a lot of time in a very serious career and dealing with death and all of that stuff. And it was kind of blocking me from really trying and fully putting myself into building a business that I loved and could be successful at and could make money off of and all of that stuff. So I finally got some clarity around that in the beginning of this year. And so I have a business that I'm creating that I really love and I think will be really valuable and helpful for people. But definitely, it's really not a journey from A to B. It's just an ongoing journey of like unpacking, discovering yourself, discovering what makes you happy, what, how you can best show up to the world. It's a journey.
Oh yeah. I think it sounds to me like you had the experience that a lot of people who are drawn to entrepreneurship have, which is, I know I want the freedom and the independence, and there's a few different things that I really care about. I guess there's two types of entrepreneurs. There's some who say, I have a business idea, and they go right into it. And there's others who say, I know I want to be an entrepreneur. I know I want to create something of my own, but I don't know what that is yet. And it can take a little while to land on the idea that suits you on a lot of different levels and also meshes with your passion profile and how you want to make money and your core values and all of that. So it's totally a process, and it can be really challenging. I'm sure there are some people now who are curious about starting a side business or a full-time business, but they're still trying to figure out what that thing is for them. So I'm curious to hear, as you were trying some different things, you were publishing ebooks, you were having probably all kinds of different ideas. What what made you feel like your current idea, and feel free to share your current idea and your current business if you'd love to talk about that, because I think it's totally fascinating and very helpful. But what was it about that idea that felt like it stuck?
Well, I think what I love about this business is that it's really built around one of my most favorite things to do, just in my life. So Evolving Conversations is basically a platform for people who love deep thought and deep conversation, and that's me. So it's a membership community, and it's going to have a forum where people can have these kinds of conversations. Could be like the one we're having, where people are talking about their personal journeys and all these things, or it could be talking about social cultural topics or other psychological topics, whatever. I personally think you can have a deep conversation about anything. So basically, I just decided to create a business around that. And also, it's because I used to be a really shy person. I would say up until college, I was really, really shy. I had a lot of problems expressing my inner world and sharing that to people. And even though I got past that, I think this experience of traveling solo really even bumped me up to another level, because when you're by yourself, like, you have to talk to other people, otherwise you're going to get lonely very quickly. And I'm an introvert, so I can deal with being alone, so that's fine. But still, human connection is a basic need. And so, I would talk to people, and we would just get on to all these interesting conversations. And especially when you're traveling, people just open up a lot more. And so, I've made these friends are from around the world, and it's just been really interesting and really cool. And so I just feel like if I'm a shy person and I can get to this point in my life, I want to help other people feel like they have the tools to make those kinds of connections, because it's just such a wonderful experience, just feeling like you can start a conversation with almost anybody, and feel like you leave that conversation feeling connected.
I mean, a whole business that is a membership community for people to make and learn about having deep conversations. I feel like you're talking to the right people here. I feel like deep conversations is like the whole Clarity on Fire vibe. So, I'm obsessed with this idea. And I think a lot of people in this community are probably going to be super intrigued. And it makes so much sense why this landed with you probably differently than some of your other ideas, because that year was so transformative when you were traveling and you're having these really interesting, fascinating conversations with complete strangers who probably some of them are now long-term friends of yours. It's you can see how all the pieces of this had to happen to get you to where you are now. So you had to have the experience of feeling really trapped. You had to have the experience of feeling like you didn't have the freedom that you were craving, and that you had experiences being really shy when you were a lot younger and not being able to make those kind of connections. And then over many years, you have these experiences of stepping into freedom, becoming more independent, opening up, having deeper, more vulnerable conversations with people. And I find that a lot of times people who are interested in creating businesses, especially if you're wanting to create more of a service-oriented business where you're helping a certain type of person, a lot of entrepreneurs are drawn to creating something that an older version of themselves wish they had access to. So I'm betting there's a version of you several years ago, maybe even when you were much younger, who wishes that you had some kind of a resource where you could have these deep conversations, or you could learn to have these deep conversations and open up to people and create those more intimate connections, but you didn't know how, or you didn't know where to find them. And what's so cool is then you get to turn around and say, I've learned so much about myself and about connection with others, and I have a lot to share now. And I wish I'd had this, so I want to make it for other people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You hit the nail on the head.
So cool. Okay. So I'm really excited about that idea. And I hope that that might help some people who might be looking for their own potential side business or future business to check in with how do they know if an idea is going to suit them? How do they know if there's that deeper connection to it? And I now that you've been doing all this reflecting on the past 4 years of your life and how different your life looks right now, you're starting a business, you're working remotely, you can live anywhere you want to at this point. How would you say that you have changed as a person from who you were in 2015?
Well, yeah, I guess actually in quite a few ways. The first thing I can think of is that I'm much more open to change than I used to be. I used to really struggle if things weren't working out or happening when I wanted them to. And, I still have a tiny bit of that, but just all of these experiences has just kind of made me release this idea of being in control of everything and instead trying to go with the flow of how things are, because I really do believe change is like the only thing that we can really depend on in life. And so it just feels much easier to have accepted that. But yeah, that's one major thing.
Oh, that's huge. I mean, it's true. It's like you can try to plan everything. You can try to plan your trips to the nth degree, and you can still find yourself riding on the back of a motorbike trying to get to your next type of transportation. Exactly. Just like, how did I get here? So you realize that trying to control everything just doesn't work. It just never goes according to plan. Okay,
exactly,
well, that's huge.
Exactly. And then, when we first started coaching, I didn't see myself as being able to do anything else. And now, like in the last few years, like I've taken freelance writing positions, I've taught online, like I'm much more open to, looking at a job listing and being like, well, can I teach myself to do that in time for when I need to start doing that? Which is just not something I would have ever done.
I love that question. When you look at a job listing, instead of can I do that, can I teach myself to do that?
Yeah.
That opens up so many more possibilities. That's great.
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly. Because if it's something that you like, at least for me, if it's something I like, then I'm into learning how to do it or teaching myself. And so that process can be fun, so.
Yeah.
And then I would say I'm really a lot better with asking for help and knowing when I need to ask for help. I've always struggled with that. And just this whole process from, losing my dad and dealing with that, and then just these career changes and just like really realizing that I need external support. It's not something I would have done several years ago. I used to think that, being independent and, I'm a feminist. So that means like, I don't need a man. Like I can do it all myself, but it's really good to know when you need help. And it's really good to not be afraid to ask for it.
It's like, I can do it all myself, but I don't know if I want to do it all myself.
Yeah. And it's like, if I don't have to do it by myself, like that's pretty cool.
That's much better.
Yeah. It's just a happier way to live. I think, I still have a little bit of anxiety. I still struggle with perfectionism, but it definitely feels a lot less than several years ago because, I'm a bit further out from practicing as a physician. So perfectionism is great in that situation. And, I think pretty much only if you're in that job should you really try to be perfect. But for everything else, it doesn't have to be necessary. And starting this business is just like you try things and then they don't work out, and like you're constantly trying to like deal with something not working and then trying something else. And so you just have to let go of trying to have everything be perfect. So that's probably very different from a few years ago.
Yeah, I would say those are pretty huge life and personal changes. life lessons there in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, I think so. I guess so.
Some of these might relate to the last question I want to ask you, which is you've been looking back and remembering how it was when you were feeling really trapped and burnt out and limited and not knowing what you wanted to do and how awful that felt. So if you were talking maybe back to that old version of yourself, or to anyone who's listening who is feeling the way you were feeling a few years ago, what advice would you want to give them, or what would you want to tell them or reassure them?
Oh, so many things. I guess the first thing I would say is, don't wait until you feel like your back is against the wall to get support or get help. It's okay to ask for help. And it actually means that you're a very strong and a very aware person if you realize that you need some support in changing your stuckness.
Yeah. Asking for help is an act of courage, if you ask me, not weakness.
Yeah, exactly. I would also say, you don't have to live your life so miserable every day. And just because you can't see the way out, it doesn't mean that there isn't one. Just try to find it. Just try to find it, and accept that it may take a while. It may be hard at times, but you really don't have to live every day in such a way that you feel trapped. Because it's just such a horrible, horrible way to feel. And then, I guess we didn't, maybe I touched on it, but I would also say address your money issues, because I think, and I know that you guys talk about this sometimes, but I think we all have these weird relationships to money that maybe we sort of grow up with. And, it doesn't always look like, oh, I just have a ton of, financial debt or student loan debt. It's just for me, it was being taught that in order to be financially successful, you have to work really hard, meaning a lot of hours, a lot of self-sacrifice. And I had to sort of release that to realize and to accept that, I can make a living doing something I love, which is helping people have deep conversations. So whatever money issues you have, address them. Just address them.
Because money is one of the biggest reasons why people feel trapped.
Yeah.
And so you gotta look at your money stuff, because you might have all kind of warped views about money that are making you feel trapped when you don't need to be.
Exactly.
That's really good advice.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just don't just make a budget, but look at, why you have trouble sticking to a budget in the past. What does spending money mean to you? What does saving money mean? It's a really good idea to address that stuff. And then, I think we touched on it before. I would just tell people to think openly about their skill set. If I can do it, you can definitely do it.
Yeah. And that actually is reminding me that I remember and I was looking back for specifics on this. I was looking back at some of our notes from coaching, and I had asked you to do a visualization of an ideal working situation for you. I think we kind of answered some questions and painted this visual of what it would be like if you could work the way you really wanted to work. And then you told me in an email a while back that you were doing a job where it looked almost exactly like the visual, even though I don't think you had really believed that that was possible when you first made it. You just kind of did the exercise. But you were like, yeah, okay. And then you find yourself living that reality a few years later. So there is real power in visualizing possibilities, even if you're not fully bought into them yet.
Absolutely. I think at the time I was like, okay, I'll do this. I'm good at doing homework. But it's so funny because what I visualized that day ended up looking like one of my favorite co-working spaces to work at in New York. It totally works. And I love, I mostly work out of co-working spaces and cafes. So, yeah, it totally works.
Yeah. And I don't think
Totally
you really
works.
believed that was a real thing when you were working as a neuroradiologist, like in the office all day, every day. But yeah, you got there. So there's a lot of power in visualizing what you want and where you want to be, even if it takes you a little while to actually make it a reality.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've had good experiences with visualization since then too. So yeah, that definitely works.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. It has been more twisty and turny than either of us, I think, even would have thought when we wrapped up coaching a few years ago. But I'm so excited to hear about your new business and how much more free you're feeling and all the amazing experiences you've had, being able to travel and meet really interesting people, things that you did not know were on your horizon a few years ago. And so I know your story is going to inspire a lot of people who are feeling really stuck right now to hopefully have a little bit of belief that their life could look very different in a relatively short amount of time as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much, Kristen. This has been great.
Yeah, of course. I was so excited when you reached out in the first place. And I was like, I want to hear more. So let's record it and let everyone else hear it too. So if anyone's listening and they want to be able to find you online or they want to check out your business or anything like that, where's the best place for them to find you?
Sure. So my business is called Evolving Conversations, and the website is onevolving.com. So ONEVOLVING. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at onevolving. And you can also just email me at francine@onevolving.com.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to link to all of that so it's really easy for people to find you.
Okay, cool.
Well, please continue to keep me updated because I'm really invested in this story now. And I want to know how your business grows and what other unexpected things happen in the next few years. So we will be in touch. But thank you again for coming on and sharing your story.
No problem. This is a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Bye, Francine.
Bye.
All righty. I promised. I threatened.
Teased.
So we are doing coaching enrollment is coming back in 1 week from today. That's Friday, the 21st of January. What is coaching enrollment in a nutshell? A few times a year, we take on clients in waves because we've decided a while back letting people sign up for coaching whenever they wanted didn't work for us.
It didn't work for us. And to be honest, it doesn't really work for you. Deadlines are helpful for us and for you because it forces people to make decisions with an end point in sight. Yeah. And so if you've been on the fence, you know how you can mean to do. I mean,
there are things I've been meaning to do for years. And if someone told me, hey, you have until Friday to do that, or else you're going to lose $500. You bet your ass I would prioritize like calling that customer service person or whatever. Now, I'm not going to steal $500 from any of you by this Friday or whatever, but still.
Never is this more relevant, if you ask me, than January when everybody's saying, here's all the things I'm going to do this year. And by the end of the year, you look back and you're like, I actually do half of those things. Oops. So yes, deadlines are helpful for our business planning, but they're also helpful for you to decide, do I want to do this or not? And I have to make a decision by this date.
So guess what?
You have a 2-week window.
Yep. We're going to be doing next Friday. Next Friday, the 21st through February 4th, but it is slightly first come, first serve. So the sooner you fill out that form when it's up, when it's ready, the sooner, you'll get in line to talk to us. Yep. And we are not, I can't use as my time turner to go back and coach 3 people at 9 a.m. I'm listening to Prisoner of Azkaban on Audible right now. It's the only thing keeping me sane.
And I still have limited capacity for how many clients I can take on right now.
We just do.
There is a point at which we reach our capacity and we have to say,
get on the wait list.
Yep, you have to wait.
Maybe we'll call you. Maybe we won't.
We'll always call you.
I mean, we'll not call you, but we'll usually communicate with you in some fashion. So coaching is simple. There's only one way you can do it.
Yeah,
6
we
months.
used to have multiple options, and we decided
No.
it best serves you if we give you one option, which is what we know to be the best coaching experience.
This is just how coaching works with us. There's just one way, and it's 6 months, and that's 12 sessions. We'd usually start out once a week, and then over time, you don't need to talk to us every week because you're making so much progress. So
you're getting more into the implementation side of things. And so you probably want more time. So then we start to talk every other week, maybe even every third week by the end.
Sometimes it's every month. It depends. So it
On
averages
average.
out to 6 months.
Yes.
And I've talked to people for longer than that, for sure.
It can go a little shorter. It can go a little longer. That's an average. That's not a prescription.
Yeah.
But
that's a long time to have a coach. And have them on email, because it's not just like we're talking every week. We're also emailing back and forth.
Especially as our calls spread out, we want to keep in contact. So that's usually when we keep emailing. So you have 6 solid months, possibly even a little bit longer, of a coach making sure that you are finally getting the clarity that you've been wanting and finally doing the things that you've always said you wanted to do, but life keeps getting in the way, or your fears keep getting in the way. So a lot happens in 6 months when you have kind of a partner in crime doing doing life along with you in a lot of ways.
And telling you what to do and in what order. And hey, we don't have to think about that yet. And don't focus on that thing.
And walking you through a process that we know works because we have done it for years.
Guess what? Guess how many years we've been doing it now? 10. This is our 10-year anniversary of being coaches. And so I'm going to let you know one thing. Sort of like accidentally in alignment with our 10-year anniversary of being coaches, which is like spring, summer 2022. We are going to be launching our new website. We did a refurbished website. It took all of 2021 to work on it. And we're going to be raising our rates for coaching and the short course.
Yep.
And so this is the last time you can get coaching at our current rate. Because guess what? When you've been in the game for 10 years, you're a lot better than that person who's just been doing it for a year or two. And mama just needs to make money according to how long she's been a coach. Yeah. I'm almost in my mid-30s.
How many coaches? I mean, I feel like we were earlier on in the game. It's 10 years as a coach is a rare thing at this point, because coaching was this weird. Remember way back when we started?
No one knew what it was.
I remember I would tell people I'm a coach, and they would always ask, "Oh, what sport?"
No one would ask you that
if you know me.
Gymnastics, maybe.
Only if you look at me.
That's what
I'm actually terrible at gymnastics.
No, but like on site, you would think, well, she's stunted. So
she's small and compact.
Yeah.
Maybe she
got that whole leg.
No sport would I ever coach. No one would ever pay me for that. But after 10 years of coaching,
in a field that hasn't existed all that long in the first place, that's an achievement. I'll say it for us.
Yeah. So our website will reflect our more professional. I don't know what
masterful
or more
masterful.
That's a good word. Yeah. And our rates will reflect it too.
Right.
So this is your last chance.
Yeah.
The next 2 weeks, starting the 21st, next Friday, for 2 weeks, if you raise your hand and say, I'm interested in those 2 weeks, you are locked into our current prices. After that,
well, you've got to pay more. That's just how that's going to work. So anyway, this is a heads up. We're giving you the full download now so that you can think about it. There will be a link to our coaching page in the show notes, or you can just go to clarityonfire.com. There's a work with us tab. You'll find one-on-one coaching there.
I would highly recommend, if you're curious, read that whole page.
Do not fill out the form before you read that whole page.
Between now and next Friday when it officially opens, because you're going to learn a ton about our process, about our pricing, about everything. It's all on there. So make sure this is your heads up so you can read the fine print before you make a decision starting next Friday.
Not only that, I will also link to an episode we did a couple of years ago. Or I may have brought it back more recently than that, but I will link to an episode I think originally it was in October of 2019. I may have brought it back the year after, like October 2020. I'm not sure. But it's why career coaching has almost nothing to do with your career. That gets into our philosophy around coaching and our style and how we work. If you're interested in hearing more about that, that's a great episode. Honestly, I mean, I just think it's entertaining beyond just like hearing how it works. So there's your heads up. And we will be back next Friday with a brand new side chat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay. See you then.